one of the things that happens when we do have these calamities is that some of us, not all of us, but some of us tend to withdraw. And there's some healing that happens through solitude. But at some point, the healing will need to include interaction with other people. And what can you share with others from what you've learned that will help them?
Hi, I'm David Sams.
And I'm Victoria Robinson.
This is CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, the podcast.
And today on our show, we have got the one and only Max Lucado.
You know, he is the most humble, gracious guy. I mean, you would just never think that this guy sitting right before you has sold over 130 million books.
And 54 languages.
Max and I have been friends for quite some time. We had the most interesting conversation because he has come up with a brilliant book on finding happiness, finding joy, finding those hidden gems, those hidden secrets, and connecting the dots. And you know, in this world that we live in today where social media just drives everybody nuts and bonkers and everybody's fighting, and the bottom line is they've done surveys, and only 1/3 of America, less than 1/3 of America, claims to be happy.
That's pretty sad.
And listen to this. In the next couple of years, the number 2 quote-unquote disease in America, so to speak, will be depression.
We're not there yet. It feels like we already are. So that means everybody listening needs to read his latest book, How Happiness Happens, and everybody needs to be listening to Max Lucado.
So let's take a listen now. So, Max, the last time we worked together, I think that you had sold about 70 or 80 million books. Now I think you're up to, what, 140 million or 30?
That's what they say. My wife bought most of those.
Oh, my goodness. I saw in the back of your current book, How Happiness Happens, a list of categories. If you're feeling this way or that way, I've got a book for you. And this thing went on for pages. Right?
You know, some people write for quality. I just stick with quantity.
Yeah. So, how do you write a book and say to yourself, well, I can't really write about that. I wrote about that 47 books ago, or I forgot about what I wrote about. How do you do something that you didn't do before, or does it really matter?
Great questions. Great questions. Well, I would be dishonest to say that I don't pay attention. My terminology is first base, second base, and home run. You know, yeah. Some books I thought I'm just going to get on first base, and that's great. This is a topic for a kind of a niche, a smaller population group. But then it just boom. It really connected. And then sometimes I'll write a book thinking, man, this one's going to be, oh boy, I can't wait. And I'll tell the publisher, we'll all get excited. And then it'll just kind of get stuck on first base. But that's okay. I've learned to be okay with that, David. I can't control it. If I do my best, and the publisher does their best, and they always do, then, you know, you kind of accept what happens. I like to write. I really do. I like to show up every year with a new book. I always admired Cal Ripken, you know, because he just showed up and played ball. And I think that's what I like to do, is just show up. I don't know if I'll ever have a mega hit book, but I'd like to think that I spent a lot of time getting to first base.
Well, you've had a few mega hits.
Well, they've done well. They've done well.
First of all, how many books are you up to?
It always depends on how you count them, you know. But the books that we call adult nonfiction trade books, I think this is number 44.
Wow.
But if you throw in all the children's books, I've done a lot of kids' books, and then the fiction books, it's easily well over 100. Yeah.
Now, how do you go from fiction to nonfiction? I mean,
I'm not I haven't had great success in fiction books. I've always feel like I've got an idea. I've either never had the time or taken the time, because the real lane where I run is the nonfiction inspirational books. And so it's hard to say, okay, I'm going to take these next 6 months and I'm going to really write my best ever fiction book, because I just feel like I'm supposed to write the nonfiction inspirational books, and always seem to have another idea ready to go. And so I want to give it attention while it's fresh.
You know, I have people all the time tell me, "Oh man, I got a book. I got to write." And I'm sure you hear that morning, noon, and
Every
night,
day.
right? Every day.
Every day.
What does it take for somebody to write a book?
I usually tell people that just about everybody has a book in them. I think you've got a great story, David, of your life. I think everybody has something that they might call a testimony or their story that's really worth capturing. And I urge people to do it, if nothing else, for the legacy, to give to your kids. You know, we live in a day of self-publishing. You know, invest that money and pay for a book to be published and give it to your family, if nothing else. So I think it's a great exercise. To answer your question, though, to write a good book, I think it's a matter of getting one idea, just that one crystal clear idea. The books that never quite take off try to do too much, in my opinion. The books that really do well advance one idea through every chapter. And that's a challenging thing. It's a favor to the reader if you can focus on one thing. Like this book I'm working on now is all about happiness and how happiness happens. What can I do to increase the level of happiness today? So that's my question. There are 1,000 different directions you can go with the topic of happiness, but I chose that particular lane. Now I have a very good two editors that really help me, and they're pretty honest with me, and they do more cutting than anything else, and because I'll tend to add material that doesn't really add to the long-term goal of the book.
It's that simple idea.
I think so.
Hone in on that simple. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Like Cal Ripken, if he were to write a book, it could just be on showing up.
I think that'd be
right?
the title. Yeah, showing up. You know, and there's some value in just making yourself present in the business or giving it a go. You know, just kind of that theme. You figure out what is it that's worked well in my life that people like me to do and ask me to do over and over. Wow, there's my story. And you write about it. See what happens.
So your current book is How Happiness Happens. When I first got this, and it's a cute little cover with a coffee cup, what is it, a cappuccino with a happy face on it? Is that what that is? I got this and I thought to myself, the timing on this is really perfect because, first of all, when I go on Facebook every morning, it seems like nobody's happy. except for the cute little videos, you know. That's about it. But
the cat videos.
no. I mean, and there's just so much, just people picking at each other, and so many people on fire about this and that. It just seems like we've gotten ourselves into a big tizzy that we can't get out of. So it seems like the timing of this book is perfect.
Why is that, David? I agree with you. I just don't know what has happened in the last, I'm not sure when it started, but you're right. It's like we can't get along with each other. We can't disagree agreeably anymore. I don't know what's happened.
We've taken on this college football mentality, you know. It's like my team's Ohio State and I hate Michigan, right? And I can't believe I just said the word. But it is, we're taping this in October, so I'm allowed. In November, I'm not allowed to say Michigan.
That is a good observation.
We're very tribal now.
Very tribal. We are. That is a really good observation. What's interesting to me these days, and it's really on my mind because I'm out on a book tour and I'm talking to a lot of different folks, and then I'll post on the social media who I interviewed with, and people get mad at me. David, they get mad. I mean, not very many. And I learned a long time ago that if you have 10 compliments, you'll remember that one criticism. But those criticisms have been kind of bugging me because I'll appear on a certain show or be interviewed by somebody, and I'll post that. I'll post a picture or maybe even a snippet of the interview, and somebody will respond in social media by saying, "I can't believe you're with that person. Do you know that don't you know they believe, or da-da-da-da." And I think, well, for crying out loud, you mean we can't talk to anybody? It's almost like we're on these tiny islands. Mm-hmm. We're trying to find people to share the island with us that agree with everything we believe. And if they don't, we kick them off the island. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a new reality TV show.
Well, if anybody has a problem with me, I will tell you. I love dashikis. Are you familiar with dashikis? Okay, dashikis are African shirts.
Okay,
and I'll show one to you in a bit. I usually wear them every day, but dashiki.
Okay,
and I have about 60 of these things. but I will post them on social media, and 99% of the people absolutely love them, and they're very colorful. And I tell people, I started wearing these about 3 years ago. My daughter. We were walking through the airport in Aruba. She goes, "Dad, you look great in that." And I think she was just, trying to see if I'd put it on. I put it on.
And I
bought it. And I walked through the airport in Miami, and I had about 4 or 5, 85-year-old women stop me like I was a rock star. And my 20-year-old daughter was, Dad. The bottom line is that I felt really comfortable in this shirt. And so I went out and started buying these things. And I realized I'd been living a lot of my life in black and white, where you're always wearing a white shirt or black shirt, right? And I started wearing this, and I started feeling different.
Isn't that interesting?
And I realized that life is so much more interesting in living color than it is in black and white.
That's a good word.
Right? I mean, God created all that out there in living color.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Mm-hmm. And I was fine. But then one person said, "Hey, you can't wear that because you're not African American." I'm like, seriously? I can't wear a dashiki because I'm a Caucasian guy? It's like, this is the kind of craziness that's out there, right? But then all of these African-American women started defending me.
That's funny.
No, it's crazy what has happened about, you can't drive this car. You can't drive that car. You can't do this. You can't do that. No, this is politically incorrect. It's like, I just don't even know where this started. So with all of this unhappiness out there, with all of this just crazy stuff that's out there, how can we get back to finding happiness?
I think the secret is in dashikis. Everybody,
I set myself up for that, didn't I?
You make me want to go get one. The thing that I'm talking about a lot in the book is what we're talking about, and that is the dearth of happiness today. Only 1 in 3 Americans say they're happy, which is, I think, tragic. Just 1 in 3 Americans. Most people can't find enough happiness to check the yes on the box in the happiness questionnaire. And then my idea is that if you want to really find happiness, just make other people happy. It just really comes down to that. If your happiness depends upon circumstances, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment because we can't control our circumstances. We live in the most advertising saturated generation in history, and advertisers, as we all know, they have to convince us we're unhappy so they can convince us to buy the product that they say will make us happy. So we're always it is being suggested to us that we're not happy until we own something or buy something or move or acquire or whatever. So I think that's what's going on. I think that there's just this subliminal message all around all the time that's saying you're not really happy yet, but if you'll buy this, you will be. We got to make a decision that, okay, I'm not going to buy into that anymore. Just simply not. But I'm going to take this other approach and try what it's like to make other people happy. And that's really a fun adventure. And that's what this book is all about.
Well, I remember my old friend Bud Paxton, who's no longer with us. He's the founder of Pax TV and Home Shopping Network. He would just always say, happy wife, happy life. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That was it. That was his motto.
It was that simple, huh? There's a lot of truth to that.
I guess that's making another person happy,
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Absolutely. The Bible talks a lot about making people happy. And the phrase that I think summarizes all of the teachings in the Bible about happiness is, it's more blessed to give than receive. And the word blessed there is the word from which we get happiness. So happiness comes really when we give it away. So there's a boomerang effect. And research shows this. One of my favorite pieces of research, I put it in the book, has to do with the MRI scanners, the scans of people with an MRI, when they were asked the question, can you envision making someone else happy? And while they're thinking about it, while they're just imagining doing something unselfish for someone else, the pleasure center parts of the brain light up like Christmas trees. The same parts that light up when you're enjoying a good dinner or having sex or on a vacation, all the things that bring you joy, that same part of the brain lights up. And it's like our brains are wired to be unselfish. But since we have this proclivity toward thinking about ourselves, we don't activate that part of our brain as much as we possibly could have.
Is there a step-by-step plan to begin to discover that happiness?
I think there is. I think there's a series of scriptures in the Bible that we call them the one another scriptures. And there's 59 of them in all. So I didn't try to unpack them all, but I took 10 of them. And they're simple phrases like serve one another, pray for one another, encourage one another, teach one another, forgive one another. And so the book revolves around these one another statements. And I urge people to start with the simplest of them, like greet one another. You know, just make it your point today to say hello, you know, and especially say hello to people who never receive a hello. I was in an airport yesterday, and I was trying to practice what I preach. I tried to say hello to the folks in the security, the TSA screeners. They never get a hello, you know. In fact, I kind of grumble at them. I don't like having to go through that. But it perked them up. Now, I mean, nothing dramatic happened, but I said, hey, thanks for keeping us safe. I appreciate that. It helped me, you know. It reminded me these people have an important job, and I think they appreciated it. So we can do things that are simple like that immediately, and I think our joy level will start going up.
Now, I noticed in the book you've come up with some kind of a little challenge.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
It's the 100 Happy People Challenge. I encourage people to take 40 days, set 40 days aside and say, okay, over the next 40 days, I'm going to try to increase the number of smiles on the planet. I'm going to try to make intentionally increase the happiness level of 100 people over the next 40 days. And you might use these one another verses as your model. You know, I'm going to teach other people. Maybe take an opportunity to say, hey, here's what I've learned about that. And instead of hurrying on, share what you know. You've got something you know. Maybe forgive somebody. You know, it could be something as simple as forgiving that person who took your parking place. You know, it could be something profound that you set out on the path of forgiving people who've hurt you. So put these to work. And I encourage people to keep a journal. I did this, to test it. I kept a journal for 40 days and tried to make 100 people happy. And I can recall one. Can I share one story? Because here we are in Nashville. Mm-hmm. I was in Nashville. My daughter used to live here. And I was here visiting my daughter. I was downtown walking. I can't recall where. It doesn't matter. She used to live close to downtown. And I was walking on a Saturday morning, and the streets were pretty empty. And there was a fella sitting on some steps with a brown bag and a drink, obviously a can in the brown bag. And I thought, okay, I've got that guy figured out. I know he's probably some drifter, homeless guy, and I had really not positive thoughts. And then I thought, now, that's not fair. That's not fair. And this is all I wrote in my journal. So I said, okay. Come on, Lucado, practice what you preach. So I walked over to the guy, and I said, how you doing? I just wanted to tell you good morning. And boy, he perked up. He was as clear-eyed, as lucid as he could be. Turns out he's not some, drifter or homeless guy, but he travels with a country band. And they had just gotten off the bus. And he had just stopped to get, instead of what I thought was some type of alcoholic beverage, it was a Red Bull. He just needed a little perk. And we had the most fascinating conversation. And he's been doing this for 40 years. He's kind of your seasoned Nashville road warrior, And it was a correction of my attitude. I learned a lesson. Don't just assume things about people. Well, I don't know if it made him a lot happier. I think it did. He seemed to enjoy the conversation. It sure made me happier. And I thought, okay, way to go, Lucado. Learn a lesson here. Don't just categorize people. Pigeon holes are made for pigeons, not people. So that's an example of something I never would have done had I not taken on this 100 Happy People challenge.
So other than make the New York Times bestseller list time and time again, what are some of the things that make you happy?
I really love our grandchildren. Grandchildren and smartphones have exceeded all expectations. Now I'm going to get Dasiki. I'm going to get one of those. But no, they're so much fun. That really does make me happy. I love being home. I'm kind of a home person. I enjoy travel, but an evening at home, watching a good documentary or a movie with my wife and a glass of wine, that's just not much better.
You work a lot with your daughter now, right?
Well, yes, we do. We do. She does a lot of the Q&A sections in the book and study guides. She lives up the road. I live in San Antonio. She's in Austin, so we get to see her quite a bit. I have 3 daughters, and one lives in San Antonio, one in Austin, and one in Waco.
Are you still pastoring?
I am. I'm not leading the staff any longer. I'm not what we call senior pastor. I did that for many years. About 14 months ago now, I moved into a teaching pastor role. Basically, that means that I'm available to help with the preaching, and I usually do about 20 weekends a year. So I'm not doing all of the weekends. And also I'm not in charge of the staff.
So you get to do the best part now.
I get to do the best part. I love our staff, but managing people was never my strength.
Right. Because you have to be a part-time therapist.
Yeah, I think that's
You have to have the couch in the office that people come in, and I know.
Yeah, I know. You have to be an umpire, too. Break up a few fights. Yeah.
What is it that you have yet to get your arms around and do that you've always thought you'd like to do?
Boy, you're asking great questions. There's some parts of the world I've never seen, and because I'm a homebody, we don't travel to these exotic places that I hear of other people going to. I've always wanted to go to Northern Europe, see Scandinavia and Russia, and we're talking about just a vacation, something like that. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a pastor. I'm really excited about heaven. I'm just so curious what it's going to be like. I've done so many funerals in my life, and I've been at the bedside of quite a few folks when they pass from this life to the next, and I just think I'm just curious. That's my word. What's it going to be like? And genuinely excited about that. Not ready to die, by the way. I love life, love my kids and all, but I'm really curious what it's going to be like.
Now, you've been married for how long?
38 years.
38 years.
Since 1981.
So what has been the secret to keeping that relationship in line?
Happy wife, happy life.
Boy, I've really been working on you, haven't I?
Yeah.
I've got you.
I'm taking notes. Yeah. Unlike some of my very good friends who've struggled in marriage, and I'm deeply sympathetic and empathetic with them because mine has really been pretty easy. I think we were just blessed to have good chemistry, my wife and I. She loves what I do. She loves that I write and that I'm a pastor, and she doesn't feel threatened or resentful of the time. She's just such a cheerleader for me, and I really love who she is. She's always been a stay-at-home mom. She's never had aspirations really to work outside of the home. She keeps very busy. She's a terrific mom, and we've just our lives have seemed to sync up right. And she's beautiful. She's a really pretty lady, and she treats me like a lot better than I deserve. And so I'm just really thankful. There's parts of my life that haven't gone as I'd have hoped, but that part has been wonderful.
So when a part of your life doesn't go as you had hoped, have you ever been depressed?
I've never gone to a physician or a doctor for treatment for depression. I have battled the blues, what I call them, those low points. I've struggled and continue to struggle with sleep. I travel with Ambien. In fact, I don't think I would be able to sleep in hotels without some medicinal assistance. My wife battled depression for about a year after one of our children were born, some type of postpartum result, and she received wonderful help from a psychiatrist friend and medication. And so I'm familiar with the battle of depression and very sympathetic.
Well, I noticed in the book you mentioned that depression is going to be the
it's
one of the top diseases by 2020.
2020. Yeah, I should know this. It's gonna come up second only to heart disease.
Wow.
There's maybe 2030. I should look that up, but it's advancing quickly as the major disease.
I mean, that's unbelievable. You know, one thing that I have really come to realize, and that is, I'll give you a perfect. I was just in Aruba again. You know, that's my other home. I was just in Aruba last month, and I was looking out across the beach, right, and everybody's in their chaise lounges or whatever. I'm seeing dozens of people, right, and 9 out of 10 people are on their phones. Here you have a beautiful ocean, this unbelievable sand, you know, that kind of white sand that's kind of almost mud. It's so fine, right?
Yeah.
And beautiful skies with the big white puffy clouds.
Yeah.
And people are on their phones, right?
You're nailing it right now. You're nailing it.
They're isolated. They're not talking to the person next to them. They're not in the ocean. I'm sure that we see this all the time in restaurants.
We do. I was in New York City just 3 or 4 days ago, and I was in an elevator. It was really packed. Every person in the elevator was looking down at their phone. And I'm not saying that 30 years ago we would all be having a lively conversation, but the odds of somebody greeting one another, saying hello, how's your day going? Oh, good to see you again. None of that happens. None of that happens because we're so locked in on the social on the smartphone. Yeah. So what I wonder is what interpersonal relationships are going underdeveloped among younger people these days. That here you and I are talking like our parents used to talk. You know, well, when we were kids, But the truth of the matter is, since we didn't have that, we learned to talk to each other.
Hey, now I would go out and play baseball in the street back in the day. You know, I mean, we really did that.
We did that. We did, didn't we? Yeah, we did those goofy things. But we had to talk. I mean, we got our social interaction from conversations, not from pushing buttons. So a good question is, what are the consequences of this? What interaction abilities are going underdeveloped right now because we're so dependent upon smartphones and texts and tweets to express ourselves?
Well, I think there's a big difference back in my day. Now, back in the day, if you were going to ask a girl out, you asked her out. You didn't send her a text.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
There's a difference. There's a difference.
You know, because you have to interact, you know, when you're in front of somebody. You actually have some dialogue.
And doesn't this speak into what we were talking about earlier about the anger in society today? I think that some of the comments that we read, the angry comments, I think if that person writing or communicating those comments were actually looking into the face of the person to whom they're addressing those comments, I think they would tone it down. It's easy to be to lambast somebody when all you're doing is typing with your finger into the phone. It's something else if you're sitting at a table with a cup of coffee, and I think you would tone it down because you'd see the impact those words are having. And so I think that social media has contributed to this anger that's in our society. It's done a lot of great things, don't get me wrong, you know, but it may be a strong contributor.
So for somebody who is going through depression right now, maybe they've lost a loved one, maybe they've ended up on maybe they've gone through a breakup, gone through a divorce, maybe they have lost their job. obviously they're not in a state of happiness. What can this book do for them when they pick it up?
Well, what I would hope is that something in this book would help them see that this stormy time will not last forever. It's a real time in their life, and it's a challenging time, but it won't last forever. It doesn't have to. And to have some hope that the good days are going to come back. But just be patient. Be patient. Be kind to yourself. Don't feel bad for feeling bad. It's just these seasons come with life. And consider, just consider reaching out to other people. One of the things that happens when we do have these calamities, David, in our life is that some of us, not all of us, but some of us tend to withdraw. We don't want to see anyone else. It's safe at home, or it's safe to be quiet, and so we avoid other people. And there's some healing that happens through solitude. But at some point, the healing will need to include interaction with other people. And the interaction can take the form of helping other people. You've been through something. As I'm talking to people who've been through a hard time, you've been through something, and it's not been easy, but redeem it for something good. And what can you share with others from what you've learned that will help them? You've been afflicted. Now, would you be willing to go to somebody who's living with a similar affliction and see if you can be the voice that says, here's what I learned. Here's how I got through it. And as you do that, you'll sense that the joy is coming back. You may always carry the wound from this affliction. You may always, and probably will, especially deep ones. This sorrow can be redeemed for something good by helping other people.
Well, the one thing that really has helped me find my footing and really get back on the happy track is, first of all, I was living in the land of regret. After going through a divorce many years ago, that took years and years and years for me to get through. And I just thought my life was over. And as you know, I had 2 beautiful daughters, and devastating. But I will tell you this, the last 2 years, guess who I have spent time on the beach with in Aruba?
Who?
My 2 daughters. Of course, they go every year. But my ex-wife was there with me.
Oh, my goodness.
And this year with her fiance.
Yeah.
And I bought the cigars and he bought the tequila. Okay. So forgiveness is a big deal.
It's huge, isn't
Forgiveness is a big part of the equation.
And has that forgiveness, is that happening?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, definitely. Because otherwise, if you live in that land of regret and land of never forgiving and never letting go,
you're right.
It just wears on you. And you think she's worried about it? The other party is what I'm saying. Okay, I'm not picking on her, by the way. But I can sit around thinking about it.
Right. But
is the other person really thinking about it?
Yeah. And one of the one another verses is forgive one another. Duke University listed 8 characteristics of happy people. 4 of those had to do with choosing not to harbor grudges, all in that same category. So I hear what you're saying, and good for you. Good for you. It's not everybody who can move forward. One of my favorite quotes is the reason that the windshield is so much larger than your rear view mirror is because your future is so much larger than your past, so much more important than your past. And sometimes it's just time to move on. So good for you.
Well, speaking of moving on, I know you got things that you have to do, and I'm going to...
Well, this was a delight.
This is fun.
You do a great job.
We have to
really
do this more often. It's been a while since we did this, and I really appreciate you stopping by here, the homestead.
Yeah.
And the book is called How Happiness Happens. Here I have to put my glasses on to read the subtitle. It says, Finding Lasting Joy in a World of Comparison, Disappointment, and Unmet Expectations by Max Lucado. And I would encourage you to get a copy of this wherever books are sold. Look, let's face it, they're all sold on Amazon.
That's true.
I know I have to be politically correct for your publisher to say wherever books are sold, right? But we all know.
Man, there's some boy, that part of the world has changed too, right?
It sure has.
Boy.
Thank you for stopping by, my friend.
Thank you, David. You do a great job. It's great to see you. And I'm going to go find a Tashiki shirt.
So, Victoria, are you feeling happy now?
You know, I got to tell you, I've been very blessed. I haven't dealt up to this point in my life with depression. I'm a pretty upbeat, happy person, but why not keep reading a book that's going to keep me there? So, yeah, I'm feeling really happy today.
Well, I've dealt with depression a lot in my life until I met you.
All right, well, maybe Max will let me help him write his next book.
And you brightened up the room.
Well, David, thank you. I'll give you 30 minutes to shut up, but we don't have time.
Truly, there have been times in my life that, been dark, but I wish I would have had this book about 20 years ago.
Sure. Yep.
And this knowledge that, first of all, Max is full of wisdom.
He is full of wisdom, but do you think he could have written this book 20 years ago? That's why I believe the wisdom of the older is something that this younger generation should pay attention to. We've walked down roads they haven't, and we can impart that wisdom as Max does in his book.
So make sure you go out and pick up a copy of How Happiness Happens by Max Lucado. It's now available on Amazon.com or wherever you get your books. I'm David Sand.
And I'm Victoria Robinson.
And you've been listening to Contagious Influencers of America, the podcast, from the producers of Keep the Faith.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram or go to keepthefaith.com.
If you enjoy the podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review Contagious Influencers of America.
Be sure to join us next week. And of course, thank you for listening.
And remember, go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a lot more fun than living it in black and white.